interactions, some ideas, various kinds of things. So be thinking about that as I go through. So I'm on a little tiny laptop, so I can't do it quite as easy as I, hold on just a minute. There we go. I usually can do this really easily. Hopefully, now I can't see anybody, but hopefully you can see the slides now. So, and then I'll remove them when I'm done, and I'll be able to see your faces. So I saw a couple of people turn on their cameras, and I'd love to see you after I'm done. So thanks so much. So I have titled this A Bolder Way Forward, a powerful new framework to ensure that Utah girls and women thrive in the state of Utah. And so I want to give a little background. I've been presenting this a lot the last 3 months, but want to give this group a little bit of a background. And just in case you haven't specifically heard more generally about the best and worst states for women's equality, and a few things about where we're at here in the state of Utah to set the stage and just think about why this is needed. So as you may have heard, and I do a lot of media on this, and this screen is 2021, we have been, and you probably can't see this real specifically, but we do get hit, every year we get the best and worst state for women equality, and this is not the only one, but, and we get ranked as the worst state for women's equality. Out of 100 points, I don't know if you could lean up and see, the Utah is about 29, almost 30 points, and we've been last place. And I'll give you a little bit more information, but I'm going to go pretty quick on this. And some people ignore this. And we did Science Bank. Scott Anderson had commissioned us a year and a half ago to do a really in-depth study on the 17 indicators. And again, together they're worth 100 points. So I don't want to take too much time on this, but 10 of them worth 40 points really are workplace environment. And you can see the first number behind income disparity is 2021. The second number is 2022. So you can see, I won't read all of those numbers, but you can see these kinds of equality things. Look at the gender pay gap. That's the first one. Wyoming has always had a worse pay gap than us. And so I could always say, at least we're not the worst. And then this past year, we became the worst on that. Higher income disparity, the difference between men and women, you can see we rank really poorly there. Also the disparity in a share of executive positions. And that's not just that's in government and business and any kind of, that's census data. So they take people that have checked certain boxes. And you can see we have minimum wage, which we don't get very many points for that disparity in minimum wage, which we're actually the best on that. Unemployment, we're very good right now on that. Entrepreneurship rate disparity, we're ranked a little bit lower on that. Disparity in average number of working hours. I won't explain some of these, but you can see at number 10, the disparity in poverty rate. And we're actually, as a state, with the rankings go up and down a bit in the state on that, but we rate pretty well. Unless, I have to say, unless we are in Utah, there's two areas that if you are a woman and really in that older group, much older than me, so older group, there's a likelihood, much more likelihood in Utah that you're going to be living in poverty. And then also, if I were there and I were looking at you, I would say, what do you think the other one is? And you would probably know that if you're a single mother living in the state of Utah, depending on the data source, 30, 38, 39, 40% of you will be living in poverty. So that's a little bit of the workplace environment. We do have visual dashboards of all of these on the website. If any of you are not familiar with the work of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, we do send a monthly newsletter out. We just released yesterday an update with details on domestic violence. So if you haven't seen, it's a 2023 update on that, and it's some of the best research that we have. We still need more, but just know that that came out, and we're developing more visual dashboards. And so overall, in workplace environment, in 2021, we ranked 44th, and the same in 2022. And then there are, the second section is education and health, and that's worth 40 points. And there's only 3 indicators or metrics on this. The first is that we have the biggest gap in the whole nation by far between men and women getting their graduate degrees, anything after that bachelor's degree, biggest gap. And then disparity in math scores, test scores, we're 43rd, and this is 8th grade. So in the state of Utah, in 8th grade, girls, boys take math scores. There is a big gap between girls and boys. There are some states that have no gap. There are countries with no gap. So it's not biological. It's not, genetics. It's socialization. And just think about the impact. I mean, if you don't believe that you're good at math, that impacts how you move forward. It impacts so many things, actually. It impacts the relationship you have with money. It impacts your choice of college major. It impacts your career choices, all kinds of things. And then disparity in doctor visit affordability. We have a gap. We've made some progress with that. And then the last piece, I won't go through all these specifically, is again, this measure is of equality in the state of Utah. Political empowerment, 20 points. And you can see that we have 6 seats in our delegation in Congress, and we have no women there. And then in state legislature, we actually went up slightly there and then are back down to 40th right there. And then we do have a lieutenant governor who is a female. So we are a little bit higher in that last one. But overall, in education and health, 50th. And then in political empowerment, and I hope you're appreciating my background of this, we were 49th in 2021, went to 42nd just because other states kind of shifted, but we've gone back down in rank as well. So just setting the stage in terms of at least these rankings and metrics, that we do have some concerns in terms of women and girls in the state of Utah. There's other metrics. We're working on collecting those, and we have lots of reports. Julie Valentine from BYU and Leslie Miles did an update, very good report last year. If you're not familiar with it, you might appreciate it. Hopefully you would appreciate it, on an update in Utah on sexual assault. So we do have reports on mental health and eating disorders and all kinds of things where women are in leadership roles in politics and government, and all kinds of reports. But what we do know, as I transition over into that bolder way, that women's leadership matters, and the presence of women and the voices and our confidence, all of that matters. And it matters in getting things done. It matters with our state legislature. It matters. In fact, I've asked people through the years. I remember right before the pandemic, I gave a speech to about 500 high school young women. And I said, do you think it matters that we don't have as many women in our state legislature as most other states? And I looked at them and they were thinking, and then I could see most of them saying it probably doesn't matter. They were like nodding, and I stepped up to the edge of the stage and I'm like, it matters so much. The research continues to say that states who have more women on their state legislature actually allocate money differently than we do in the state of Utah. Number one, if I was there with you and you could see, and I could see you, the number one, typically K through 12 gets funded more. Second, healthcare and mental health, all kinds of healthcare. And then of course, social programs. States with more women in their state legislature typically give more to domestic violence and sexual assault and homelessness and poverty and those kinds of things. There are so many benefits to have men and women in more equal numbers. in leadership roles, in places of influence. And this we have lots of reports on this. So these are just some of those categories. What I know is, and I'll just give you one quick example. I've done through the years a lot of work in the UK, in England, and the other countries over there. And for years and years, they've used the term wicked problem. So we don't use that much here, but I love that term, wicked problem. And they don't mean an unrighteous problem. That's not what they mean. They mean a really challenging problem. And so if it's a simple problem, it really doesn't matter if it's diverse. If a team is diverse, one person can make it. But if it's a kind of a wicked problem, if it has more complexity, the benefits are so clear today. So clear. I mean, hundreds and passing up thousands of studies now, that when there's more equal numbers of women and men, you make better decisions. You are more innovative, you are more creative, there's better decision making. I mean, the research is clear about this. You serve society better when you are in more equal numbers. And so this one study I wanted to give you came out during COVID, but it was in England, a military study. The researchers put together a full day with the military, and they had many different teams of 5 people, and 2/3 of the team were five men, and 1/3 of the teams had 4 men and 1 woman, which is not even the tipping point, which is 30%. And so they gave them a wicked problem. And they watched them all day and wrestled through trying to resolve the problem. And it was striking. The research was striking. The results were striking. In every case except for one. In that case, the men shut down the woman, would not listen to her. In every other case, the best performing teams were the ones with 1 woman and not the all men. And it wasn't necessarily because she was the smartest, maybe she was in some cases, but it was the mix and the different perspectives. It was very clear. That study was very clear. And so when we have just, so many teams or groups or decision-making is coming from men, what we know is we're not serving society in the ways that we can. We're not serving our businesses, whatever the entity is. It really matters. And there's a benefit when men and women work together for individuals, community members, teams, organizations, businesses, communities, governments, societies in general. It's just clear. And so when people push back, and there's, pushback about diversity, inclusion, and those things, it's like, know the research. It matters. All of these things matter, and it takes work. So let me shift now. So I'm just setting the stage. There's so much research. Some of you have followed my work. I hope all of you. And I have a great team right now that's doing so many good things. But let me shift now into a bolder way forward. So national and statewide studies, as we've talked about, continue to show that girls and women in Utah are not thriving in critical areas. So year after year, as I mentioned, Utah continues to have high levels of domestic violence, sexual assault, child sexual abuse, gender-based discrimination, while also ranking as, and I mentioned this already, the worst state for women's equality. And we have low levels of women's leadership representation in nearly all domains. And although the needle has moved slightly in a few areas in the last decade, with its current trajectory, and I've studied, before I say this, I have done work at the United Nations, I've done work at the European Union, and in different parts of the world, we study trajectory. Like, how long is it going to take us to get equality or to solve issues, especially in the gender? That's the place I work. But what we know is, with our current trajectory in the state of Utah, it will take 2 to 3 to 4 decades to make notable progress. And I want you to think about that. I think that's unacceptable. We have to do better for our daughters and granddaughters in those those people around us that we look to mentor and love and care about. So I'm saying it's time for Utah to embrace a bolder way forward, because when we lift Utah girls and women, we lift all Utahns. When we lift girls and women, we lift boys and men, we lift families. And it's not scarcity. We have a lot of scarcity mentality in the state of Utah when people say, well, if we lift girls and women, then that somehow takes from men. Or me as a white woman, if I lift my sisters of color, somehow that takes from me. Well, that's not the case. I mean, if I work with and lift and try to amplify and be an ally to my sisters of color, that lifts me too. It doesn't take me down. So there's an interesting thing. I'll tell you, in 2022, I have been restless. My husband calls me a restless soul. I've been extra restless because I am thinking we have to do better. We have to do more and figure out how to shift things even faster. You and so many people, me, my team, a lot of people are doing work in this area, but how do we work together in better ways, in bolder ways to move things forward? And so I am saying if we're really serious about ensuring that Utah girls and women thrive, we need to create change faster. And when you study the appetite for change, and part of my doctoral degree is leadership and human development, but also change, organization development, societal change, all of that. So I've been studying this for years. We can't anymore say 20 years down the road, let's do this change, or 10 years even. Our appetite for change is not that far out anymore. So I'm saying 7 years, 2030 with the checkpoint in 2026. And that includes a shift from outputs. Now we still keep track of outputs, right? How many of these people we served, or how many reports I get out, or how, our impact on social media. But we need to start shifting to outcomes. What's going to actually change in people's lives? What's going to change in the community? What's going to change? And so that's really important. So although I've studied change for decades, I really have been restless in 2022. And then at the end of April or the end of October, I took a trip, and that's when I get to read books. Actually, I flew to Minnesota today and I read in the airport. I get really excited to read, and already I have all these ideas and more inspiration coming from my reading time. But I took 2 flights to Costa Rica, and then 3 or 4 days later, 2 flights back. And I read this book, How Change Happens, Why Some Social Movements Succeed While Others Do Not. And I'll tell you, it brought back so many things I'd learned from my doctoral program and I've been wrestling with. What the researchers do is to look at some really effective change efforts in the United States. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, gay marriage, the National Rifle Association, the whole movement decades ago to shift smoking and tobacco use. And what they did was compare those really successful ones to ones that were not. Like, what is the difference? What were the things that mattered? What are the things that success or non-successful efforts did not do? And so this is what, and I'll tell you, I'll just give you a little bit, but I would recommend the book. The bottom line is really around this systems thinking. So the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I'll tell you, I really think in Utah, we do. And I think there's some areas where people are working together better, but generally speaking, we do parts really well. I mean, we have parts and pieces going on, lots of conferences, lots of pieces, lots of things, but we're not moving the needle very much. So how do we shift so we can make each program, each part more powerful? Well, it is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You can see I have a couple of examples on this slide. You can't just study the heart really good and not understand all the pieces of the system, right? So systems are made up of interrelated, interdependent parts, but they can't be understood as a function of just the components separately. The relationship between the parts is absolutely critical. And this really is the key to more boldly advancing a common cause. So as I mentioned, we're great at parts, but now we need to work together better as a system. And this really looks at, in fact, I've met with hundreds of people in different groups the last few months. I really just started giving these ideas to people in November, and then decided right before the holidays that this was the way I wanted to move forward. And then I'm working now. Still, I'll give you a look at the model now. But in general, it is network leadership. It's not leading from the top. It's really leading to pull people together in ways, not just people, but organizations and efforts in ways where you really map, you know what's there, where are the gaps, how can you motivate people, the gaps, getting to the really root, the grassroots level and so forth. The book has a lot more, and if you look at change management theory and systems thinking, it gives you a lot more. So what I want to do though now is to just walk you through the model. Now, by the time I landed back in Salt Lake, I had pages and pages of notes in my journal, and the flight attendant said, I don't hardly ever see anybody writing, but I was writing notes in my journal. And I had this model. I thought this model would change, but it has stuck. So by the time I landed, I had this. And for me, honestly, it's something that is connecting with my head, but also my heart. I'm a very spiritual person, and connected with my heart and my spirituality, but also head, and heart and hands. Like, can we do this? I truly believe that we can do this in Utah. Now, what this model looks at, and again, a bolder way forward, that title came to me on my flights as well. This is a bolder way forward, but in the book, in general, they really talk about efforts, big efforts, massive efforts, but on one topic. But I really felt like there's lots of pieces going on in all of these areas. Why not do a really bold thing here in the state of Utah and really create these, what I'm calling spokes, in all the areas that really have been shown to make impact or really on both ends have a negative influence, but could have a real positive influence if things were changed. So if you look at this model, you can see, I don't know if you can see my little cursor over here. I'm on a little tiny laptop here, but here is the uphill road. That's for girls and women. There's a lot to do. It's steep, it's uphill. There are currently lots of potholes. And I really think a lot of the efforts and programs and initiatives have been working on making the roads smoother. And that's important, right? That's important. However, I don't think we've been here to really shift things in more bold ways, and because we haven't been working together as a system. So this is the road, and then here is the wheel, and the wheel really represents the system. And here's UWLP, and that's the role that we're playing already on the bolder way forward, is to be that entity. We'll still do our research and resources and events and the different things. Hopefully you're keyed into those because there's good curriculum and different things that we're doing that can help people that you serve. But really connecting this, being that hub organization to move things forward. And then, and the goal, of course, is to shift this wheel up this hill, and do that through network leaders, really more as a coalitions and so forth. So let me tell you that then we have 18 spokes. So the spokes are key areas where change needs to occur. And they're really important key areas where change needs to occur. And these are based on a lot of research, a lot of best practices, lots of things that we've been doing for years. So I talked to lots of people getting this together, and this is what it came out with, 18 different spokes. And then I'll get to the spokes in just a minute, but let me tell you about this rim. So there are things that permeate across all areas. And so UWLP will be really working on those RIM issues. Confidence is huge. And I think with the victims, survivors that you work with, confidence is going to be huge. And so we need to do more around confidence with resources and different kinds of things. Sexism. I'll tell you, I didn't used to use the word sexism often, and last number of years, I say it all day, every day. It really is important to look at that sexism piece. And then identity. Where's my cursor? Okay, there we go. There's my mouse. Identity would include race and ethnicity and socioeconomic and disability and LGBTQ and so many other things there. And so that identity piece is really important. And then culture. Keep losing my mouse. There it is again. Culture. Of course, you know, people say, but where is the elephant in the room, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and all of that. And it's like, that's where I have it really in the culture. And then male allyship is super important as well. I mean, if we don't have men involved in this and allyship from various categories and especially from men, this is not going to work. And so those are really important. So let's go back now and look at, here we go, the spokes. You can see, and don't get hung up on the boxes all the time. Some people have, because we just need to, so we can think about 18 things we need to categorize. But some of them will cross, in fact, some of them like higher education attainment, that actually crosses and it impacts almost every other spoke. There's 18 and you can see the 18 in the 18 bullets. Okay, let's just real briefly, let me walk you. Let me see what time it is. Okay, I am doing okay on time. So let me walk you through the spokes. So the first one's the higher education attainment. That's so important to think about at all levels. And in the state of Utah, we have changed. So at least that young women are equal, if not slightly ahead. We didn't used to be in terms of bachelor's degree. However, it's not just that competition. We need more women educated. We need more men too. It's not either or. It's not the scarcity mentality, right? So the Utah system of higher education will take the lead of the spoke for that. I've got leaders in 15 of the 18 spokes. I've got all the leadership groups figured out. And I'm meeting next week with spoke leaders to really start moving the process forward. K through 12. There are things that will be decided in the future. It could be around those math scores, confidence, full day kindergarten. Of course, you know, that's been in our session. Other things like that are really important. And so the, you know, Utah Board of Education will be, and possibly some other groups will really be looking at leading and convening. So these roles of leadership really are from the middle, and each spoke is really a wheel, because what we do is in the spokes is to get everybody together. I mean, like map out everything that's going on so we can be more intentional. Where are the gaps? What needs to happen? And I think there's been some of that work already in the areas that you focus on. So you can see finances next, and that will be a trio partner running that, the Utah Treasurer's Office, the Utah Association of CPAs, and then USU Extension has a really strong education piece for the finance piece. And then you can see in that box at the front, I keep losing my mouse. There it is. Okay, right here, if you can see that, community engagement spoke. We've got one big, and it's going to be Utah Women Run is going to be the lead organization. I have 3 great women, Nina Barnes from Southern Utah, Becky Wright, and then Verona, oh, I forget how to say her name, Mauga, I think. Anyway, I know her, but I haven't said her last name. So they will bring together all the groups and organizations, what's happening in the state, where are the gaps in terms of women running for office at all levels, but also state and local boards and commissions and committees and political parties. I have to say that's important, right? And then over here, safety and security. Of course, the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition will already doing that work. I mean, it's not like we're starting from scratch. It's just being very intentional about bringing the people into the wheel, and not only people doing the jobs that you're doing and the direct service providers, but what else do we need? Who else can be engaged? Who else should be engaged to really move the needle? And tools like public policy are important, and programs that we offer, and mentoring, and the various things. And also prevention, of course. You know, we could get into a big discussion about that. And then how do we change I mean, right now, I'm doing a lot of thinking and a lot of speaking, and mention things like breaking the silence, right? I mean, how do we get more people to understand, actually, this happens in your families. This happens, like when we're talking about sexual assault, domestic violence, or child sexual abuse. It happens all around us. It's on, you know, in our neighborhoods, in our church groups, and so forth. So who's all involved in helping, or could be helping, including the media? So sexual assault, I have a great relationship with Liliana and her team at the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Child sexual abuse, working with various groups, but Chris Yaden from Sapria is one of the people that's taking the lead for really a group, action-based group that will really work on this. And as we move forward, so many others will be brought into this. Sexual and gender-based harassment, that may be changed to discrimination, a little bit broader, but the Utah, let me think, Utah Center for Legal Inclusion, they're going to take the lead and bring people together in terms of how to shift those things. And poverty and homelessness, two great leaders there, one from the Office of Homelessness, and then also the Community Action Group in the state. Of course, they're doing work already. This is not starting from scratch. It's just shifting things towards this system thinking in a more profound way. We can always do better, right? And then moving down, trying to find my mouse again. There we go. I'll just go around in a circle. I had 4 initial spokes for the health. I had mental and physical split up. But as I met with 4 of the vice presidents from Intermountain Health, they helped me see, and others. There were some other people in this in another conversation as well. So I don't have all the spoke leaders figured out here, but hopefully it'll be a partnership between Intermountain, the University of Utah Health, and then the Department of Health and Human Services as well. And I've started some of those conversations, but we're still need to kind of work through that. And then have mental, physical, social help. And the lifespan would be, 4 different groups. So pediatrics, and then reproductive years, midlife, and then old women, much, much older than me. So there you go. And then the mix of all different kinds of health. And then home and family is important, right? Equality in marriage, emotional load, those kinds of things. But also we do want to highlight in our metrics and different things, real positive things that are happening with women in Utah too. And then finally, I'll go through this quickly because I want to leave plenty of time. Let me see. Oh, I guess I'm doing okay for questions. Here's the employment. Okay, just stopping here for a second. You already know this. You are the group that would know this, that there's an interaction between like higher ed, between finances, your comfort with money, and, are you seeing my mouse? Domestic violence, and, the confidence to leave, all kinds of things interact. So women's representation was really career advancement in the workplace culture, the family-friendly policies, the culture that's welcoming to women and more inclusive and diverse. The Women's Leadership Institute are taking the leadership role for that. Workforce development, lots of groups working on this. The Salt Lake Chamber, people helping people, and also tech moms will take the lead for workforce development. And the lead just means leading from the middle, bringing together the groups, mapping, figuring out where are the gaps, who's doing what do we still need to make this shift actually move so we can move faster in 7 years what would generally take us 20, 30, 40 decades, or not decades, but years to, that would be really depressing. We have leadership development. I'm getting close to the leadership of that. Entrepreneurship, Anne Marie Wallace from the Women's Business Center of Utah is leading that. I have two wonderful women who are leading the gender pay gap, and there's some interesting work to be done there. Katie Witt, who was the governor, not the governor, the mayor of Kaysville, and also ran for Congress. She's one. And then oh, I'm forgetting her first name, Deneva Knight, sorry, from Comcast. She is in leadership role there. And then STEM fields, Women's Tech Council and also BioHive will partner that work. And then finally, childcare. And of course, not least at all, that's really important. Voices for Utah Children, United Way of Salt Lake, and then Community Builders Foundation, which is the nonprofit kind of connection to the Salt Lake Chamber. So you can see, I just wanted you to get a feel for the things happening. And these spokes are really wheels, not just, you know, a skinny spoke, but each will be a movement. And then I'll tell you, the leaders of the spokes are really excited to be connected to a bigger movement, because when there's shifts in terms of finances or more women in public office, or, you know, these other things shift with other spokes. I hope you can see that. So I know this is a big, it's kind of bold, but it's really important. And tools, I mean, it's really important to kind of get the flavor by reading the book, I'll say. But tools can be things like public policy, of course, but also what programs do we offer? What's going on in terms of mentoring programs and different things? How do we get to the grassroots level? That is so key. If you don't get the information to the everyday person, to the everyday business, things don't shift. How do we change the way we look at things? Like when I was meeting with the child sexual abuse group, they're like, you know, this happened with the tobacco, quitting smoking, different kinds of things. You know, all of this happened. Like, you have to change the way they think about things. So when I was meeting with that child abuse, sexual abuse group, they said, you know, it's not the message that we need to get to everybody so they can change the way they think is not necessarily that child abuse is bad. It is bad. I mean, it's terrible. It's horrific, but people generally know that. But what they don't get, and what needs to happen in that shift in their minds, is that it's happening in our families. It's happening down my street. It's happening in our church groups, because people don't believe these things are happening. So how do we shift that? So there's, like I said, training and public policy, but there may be other kinds of tools that we need to engage in to really shift things forward there. So I did want to give you, and you probably know a lot of these come from some of our reports, but you know, and I'm going to go really quick through this. But generally speaking, in terms of the sexual assault, child sexual abuse, and domestic violence areas, we know that 1 in 3 women has been sexually assaulted. And generally, even though some of it's older data or whatever, 1 in 6 has been raped, and so many before the age of 18. And 75% of survivors knew their attacker before the assault. And as we know with rape, we are above the national average. It's the only violent crime where Utah is above the national average. And it's really interesting to look at that. Utah is the 9th highest in the nation, but look at the reporting. Yeah, and so we've done some reading about reporting in more conservative and religious societies. It's interesting, and it's sad, but this is reality in our states. So do we need to change? And by the way, I mean, safety and security of women and girls absolutely impacts, you know, so much. Confidence, willingness to lean in and use our voice, decisions, to advance in careers. I'm thinking of all those, things that I just put on that wheel, that change. Everything impacts if you do not feel safe, right? And so a few statistics that we have pulled together on child sexual abuse. Nearly 13% of Utahns report being molested before the age of 18. More than 3/4 of all sexual assault victims in Utah report being sexually assaulted before their 18th birthday, with more than 1/3 of those survivors stating they were assaulted before their 10th birthday. 1 in 13 Utah high schoolers were physically forced to have sexual intercourse when they did not want to. 1 in 9 girls, 1 in 24 boys. And then this CDC data, which we should be getting in the next 2-3 months, should be getting the CDC 2021, but you probably read or know about the report that came out I think it was 2 weeks ago, that gave the national grim look at girls, not in Utah, and we'll have to wait to see that. But, they're thinking about suicide, planning for suicide, or depression, and so forth. We've got work to do. So 1 in 5 girls, 1 in 13 boys experienced sexual violence in the last 12 months. And Utah's significantly above the national statistics for this category. So the only 2 states with higher rates were Idaho and California. And then finally, a couple of quick slides, and then I'll finish up. But this domestic violence is a serious, widespread issue affecting women and families in the state of Utah. 1 in 3 Utah women will experience some kind of domestic violence in her lifetime. And then finally, and this one is actually, we're going to update this one because I think we have new data that just came out this week. But Utah's rate of domestic violence is higher, basically. And even though it says slightly lower for youth, that reporting and the different statistics where we've been analyzing. So there's some deeper understanding to all of the statistics, and of course, much more research that needs to happen. So I say this is all crap. First of all, we've got to do better, and it's unacceptable. And I say, why are we as Utahns not moving heaven and earth to protect our children, our families, neighbors, and friends? And I use this elephant picture that I think for a long time, even though you and others have been working in this space, but as a society, we've just been hanging out with this. We've been silent. We've let's just hang out and hope that it passes, right? And so I'm just saying it's time. We have to shift in better and bolder ways. It's time to do something. And it means that we get out of our comfort zone. We have to get out of our comfort zone to make changes in Utah. And success is one way, comfort zone is the other. We have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so back to the bolder way forward. The overarching goal of the bolder way forward is to make Utah a place where more girls and women can thrive in any setting. And although there's not one metric that can assess and measure this overarching goal, UWMP will work with all spoke leaders to craft 2026 and 2030 goals for each of their areas. And those are really the outcomes. So in fact, right now we have 15 to 20 volunteers going out on all these topics and trying to grab anything we could find in terms of measurable outcome metrics. We're going to build up, this is going to be important. We'll upscale our work to locate and track national and state data on all aspects and create visual dashboards. And we already have some, but we have been the information hub more generally. We want to include positive metrics, but we're going to, upscale the work so that we can see, people can get on and see, here's where we're at, here's where we want to go, here's the progress that needs to, and how are we doing? So I think that's as I've looked at research through the years, as I've studied this new book, How Change Happens, This just makes sense for Utah. And I honestly, I wish I could see your faces. I'm on this little laptop so I can see nobody, but I'll turn it back on in just a minute so I can see you. But I will tell you, how can we not do this? How can we not find the best ways to move forward to protect our children and to shift things for girls and women and boys and men in our state, right? I truly believe that using this Bolder Way Forward framework that Utah can actually not just be better, but become a national leader in how to implement positive change for girls and women. And as I said before, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We could do amazing things in our state, I think, but we need to get away from only doing the pieces and parts and figure out how do we unite in bolder ways, better ways, to start doing something remarkable. And we need that for our girls and women and families in our state. Utah must do better to ensure everyone thrives. Melinda Gates once stated, if you want to lift up humanity, empower women. It is the most comprehensive, pervasive, high leverage investment you can make in human beings. And our vision is not to lift girls and women at the expense of boys and men. That's the scarcity mentality. Instead, we believe there's enough for everyone through cooperation and collaboration, which is the abundance mentality. And as I said at the beginning, when we strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women, we strengthen everybody. And that means boys and men too. And it's just critical that we do this, that we move forward in a way that can lift everyone in more powerful ways. And two more slides to conclude. I was in Washington, D.C. before the holidays doing some speaking there. And I found this quote and then was at this monument too. And I think it's really applicable. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. And that's what we need. We need to stay awake, we need to adjust, we need to be vigilant, and we need to face on head on the challenge of change, particularly in these areas that you focus on in so much of your work. And I had an elephant before. Some of you, if you've heard me speak before, you've seen me use this before, but some of you, it may be new, so I'll use it again. And so I do love this, that it's a herd in Kenya. And these female mothers, these moms, when a mother elephant gives birth, the other mother elephants, and I picture the little elephants are male allies, that they just circle around her and they protect her. And she gives birth and they kick dirt on the baby elephant so the predators can't smell. And they just rally the troops. And we need women to rally the troops. We need men to rally the troops and say, we need to do better and we need to shift in Utah to become, one of the states with the lowest. Hopefully we could eradicate this, but just get those percentages down. And it's not just percentages, they are lives. And you know better than I, the individual lives that can be saved, that can be lifted and impacted by the work that we do in shifting things together in a bolder way here in the state of Utah. So if you are not on my listserv and get my monthly newsletter, it came out yesterday, feel free to utwomen.org up here in this corner. It's where you can sign up or just send me an email as well. And I can, if you're interested in these slides, I can make a PDF and share that as well. Okay, now I can, that's it. And I would love to have comments. I would love to see faces, but I cannot even see the room. Can someone, oh, there's maybe. popping up there. Yes, I can see little tiny people, little tiny. I can see a few of you, but someone from the room will have to tell me if there's comments or questions, but I can see some lovely faces, 2 rows of you in front of me. So thank you for turning your cameras on. So, and good, a few of you look like I know you maybe, so it's good to see your faces. So hopefully, oh my gosh, I'm looking at that room and my face is like super big on the screen, like so big.
Okay. Questions in the chat.
Okay. Oh, there's some things in the chat, she's saying. Oh my gosh. So are they questions? Okay.
We talked about the spokes and they wanted to know, they were curious where gender and sexual minority status fit in the spokes.
Great. And that really is, thank you for that clarification. So on the rim, remember the rim? And by the way, you can get, if you go to utwomen.org, my website, just a couple weeks ago, we put on a page, you'll see at the top navigation, a bolder way forward. And so just as a couple weeks ago, we have a page and there's a 30-minute video. You've heard me. It doesn't have all the details that I gave you, some of the statistics and so forth. But, and then we just today put up a champion page and there's going to be more information about who's leading the spokes and so forth. And so back to the question at hand, the rim had an identity piece. And so in that identity is where it's really included. And that rim is super important because that needs to be integrated with every single spoke. And so that's race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, disability, socioeconomic, I'm just trying to think of marital status, right? I mean, all of those things are going to be very key. If they're not integrated with all of those spokes, we're going to be missing stuff. We really will. So I am, right now, I've just been pounding for a few months to get my spoke leadership, I call it, and I'm getting close on that. And then I'm, working on funding and all those pieces, trying to get the support needed so we can be successful, right? And then there will be layers of groups in the near future. Hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll be engaging more organizations around LGBTQ and race. And I'm Nubia Pena and I co-lead for the governor's strategy around girls and women specifically. So I'm in those conversations. So very, very important work. And I'm just going to give you a heads up that we did yesterday do the domestic violence update. So that's important. But in 2 weeks, we're going to have, I can't tell you the specifics right now, but we're going to have, and Christiana, you were the author. Yes, I just connected your face to your name. She was the lead author of that report yesterday. Very, very good. Thank you for all your work. Sorry, I didn't catch that before. I just connected your face to your name. So awesome. But in 2 weeks, we have a report that's going to be coming out. The reason I'm getting teary-eyed is because Saturday I was editing this report and thinking about these pieces of legislation that were coming up to get rid of DEI basically in higher ed. And then I'm reading the results of this study that Lisa, oh dear, her last name is escaping me. Lisa, she's a professor at the University of Utah. And it is a whole report, original research on social safety. That is going to be powerful. And just keep that in the back of your mind. You're going to want to get a point to that, and really oversampled in the state of Utah. Qualtrics helped them do that. Oh my gosh, I'm taking too much time. Anyway, there's going to be a report that I think you'll be interested in. So, oh my gosh, I got to stop talking. I want more questions. So, Matt, I see your face and I see something over. Do you want me to read it, or do you just want to? give me the question real quick.
Sure. I guess maybe a little bit more discussion as it relates to where does men fit into all of this,
Perfect.
and how do we, there's so many voices out there that really try to put men down,
Oh,
media and so many places, and so really how we can make sure men are engaged in this process, not maybe on the other side of feeling like, maybe defensive by it, or feel like we're being neglected somehow.
excellent question, Matt, and I appreciate that concern. No, and I hope you appreciated the scarcity mentality. We can't do that. We don't use that model of that right. I have to be careful when I use the word feminist in Utah, because actually we're all feminists if we believe women's voice should be heard, right? But that left wing kind of like, where women rise if men go down, that's not. I have people ask me sometimes, do you not like men? I'm like, because you do this, girls and women. I'm like, I love men. I'm married to one. I have 3 sons. I have a daughter. I have 6 brothers and no sisters, and they're awesome men. And I love men, and we cannot raise girls and women at the expense of boys and men. It just needs to be all together. And we do have some men in the leadership, and more will be brought. If you look at my website on champions, we just made that live today. You'll see men in the picture. But Matt, that male allyship on the rim is very strategic. And I think there's going to need to be some work on helping men understand and train and have safe conversations with men themselves on how to be better allies. Because after Me Too, sometimes men are a little like not sure how to be allies. I was just presenting a couple of months ago to Collide companies, and 5 of their men leaders came up and said, we want to teach us how to be better allies. We want to do this and feel comfortable really lifting. So many of them have daughters and different things. So Matt, we want more men engaged in this because it matters. It matters for everyone. So thank you for that question, and that, keeping that on the top of our minds as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Who else would like to you don't just have to ask questions. If you have something very profound to say. Sorry, I leaned into the camera. My face is super big in the room now. I'm going to get back here. Anyway, so at least I'm seeing a few smiles from you. I appreciate my humor. So who else?
I guess I hadn't really thought the connection between domestic violence and all of those other factors. So I really appreciate you bringing that forward and leading that to state leaders and making those kind of connections.
Thank you. And just, I'm looking at the time, and I have about a few more minutes, but just if you're thinking about, how can I get involved? Okay. That's important. Christiana got involved. She volunteered to help do research, need more research. But in general, I mean, as Jen Campbell and Liliana, UCASA, and the child sexual abuse area, Maloof Foundation's PRIA, Prevent Child Abuse Utah, and some other players there. I mean, there's going to need to be in each spoke. Anybody doing work on that really needs to be, I say, gathered. Sometimes it's gathered on spreadsheets, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's strategic conversations, or dividing into smaller groups of let's really dig into how can we do this or that. But I think there's some real space to connect with Erin and Jen at Domestic Violence, Liliana, depending on what your areas of focus. So there's being engaged in the spoke areas that are important, but working, if you're interested in confidence, we'll have groups come together for those rim areas, and just, there's going to be a lot of ways to be engaged. If you're in different parts of the state, we need, I mean, this needs to get down to the cities. I mean, more than the cities, the groups, the streets, people on the streets. And so there's going to be layers of things as we move forward in ways to be engaged. So don't feel shy if you're feeling, and I call it the call, whether you're religious or not. I happen to be very religious myself, and I push from inside my religion, the Church of Jesus Christ, and around. If you feel called, you can be religious or not religious and still feel called. That was my point, to step forward and do something in terms of, beyond. Please let me know. Just send me a note. So I don't have it all figured out. I just started this like 3 months ago, but what I know is this: if we take 2 years to get everything perfect, first of all, it's a different world than 2 years ago, right? I mean, we can't wait. I think I hope you feel my passion. You've seen some of my tears. We can't wait. We have to move. And you are already moving in so many ways, but this is just how do we do this in better ways using this systems thinking? How do we do this? And I truly believe that this is the way forward for us. I'm a big ball baby. And those in the room can see me bawling really, really big.
Which documents or email address in?
It's in our shared drive too.
Oh, no, that's what I'm looking at.
Over email.
Say that again. What?
I'm just trying to find your email.
Email? Oh, yeah, it's in the box. Let me share.
Go to the Utah Women Leadership Project in there. It's on the website.
It's on the website. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. There's my email. And you can just utwomen.org. You can get to the website. And like I said, we're just building the website. We've got the one page. We just linked the other page, but then we'll start in the next couple of weeks laying out the spoke information so people can know details about that. And then we will start putting more and more metrics, how we track things on our website, and it'll build from there. So I know it's crazy. I know you think right now there's this crazy old woman thinking that we can do this, but the reason I know we can do this is because of people like you. Because we have, even though Utah sucks in some ways, sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that word, for women and girls, we have amazing women and men in this state who, if we decide to take this up as a whole, can do things that I don't think could be done in any other state. And that's really shifting and moving the wheel. So I think we are done. You don't have to listen to you. You're like all ready to go eat or exercise, or what are you going to do in Moab? I don't know. Something
We didn't look at sunny weather, but honestly, thank you so much for being here. I hope that we can even just take a glimmer of your passion. You are so amazing, and we really appreciate you taking your time. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.